welcome to the Liquor Connoisseur. I'm Crystal. We've got Roger behind the camera today. We're going to do something a little different and interview Dewayne Poor. He is beyond a connoisseur. We are in his vault where he's got how many bottles?
There's about 3,000 in here.
Just in here. All in alphabetical order. And these are single malt, Scotch, and bourbon?
Primarily, this room is single malt Scotch with I've got about 2 or 3 shelves of bourbon. Most of the bourbon I have in a different location. So this is about half of my entire collection. First of all, thank you so much for being here. Welcome to, I call it my Malt Vault because it's typically all single malts, and it's always a joy to get to share them. So
we have already started. We are having Glenmorangie.
Yep, Glenmorangie. And this is the 12-year-old Palo Cortado cask. So it's finished approximately 10 years in a bourbon barrel and then 2 years in Palo Cortado sherry cask. So the United States got this for the first time in 2023. Don't know if they're going to release it again or not. Australia got it about a year before we did in 2022, but it's a very nice finish, 46% alcohol, very spicy, and then finishes with some real dark plums and stone fruits, as Dr. Bill would like to say. And Dr. Bill Lumsden is the master distiller and whiskey creator for all things Glenmorangie and Ardbeg.
And I guess I would like to start with what got you started in collecting?
Well, it's a long story, and I'll make it really long. I was a wine drinker. I drank beer and red wines, and typically only drank Cabernet Sauvignons. Same deal. I had, 1,000 bottles of Cabernet Sauvignons, had them vaulted, and, a little more difficult to store than whiskey. I developed an inner ear imbalance called Meniere's syndrome. And Meniere's syndrome has triggers. And certain things that you eat and drink triggers you to be dizzy, like non-functioning. You can't walk. You can't watch TV. You're just dizzy.
Wow. And
the only relief is some type of medicine to knock you out. So I had to have my ears operated on to take away that dizziness. One of my number one triggers after the surgery was the tannins in red wines. So no more red wine ever. And I tried it a few times, trust me, and got dizzy, and it was miserable. So I was looking for something as complex with the layers of flavor and where you could find all these different wonderful aromas on the nose and notes on your palate. And a buddy of mine that I worked with here in Oklahoma City, a cardiac anesthesiologist named Gary Brown, long retired now. Gary introduced me to Cardew, a single malt Scotch whiskey. And I tried it, and that led me down the rabbit hole. And I started trying everything that I could find. And at first, totally disliked smoky, peaty whiskeys. Loved the rich and round, light and fruity, spicy. But as time went on, I started falling in love with the smoky, peaty whiskeys. And so now there's just very few. I've only met one Scotch that I don't care to drink. The rest of them, I think, are amazing. And then, when I first started, I was a snob, and I would not drink blended Scotch whiskey. I had to be single malt. And through different events and different friends, I got to try some really nice, older, higher end, just old rock gut as well. But the old stuff from the 20s and 30s into some of the blended Scotches. Kind of fell in love with them, and then started exploring that as well. So there's some great, some of the old Johnny Walkers, the old Red Label is probably one of my favorite from the 20s and 30s. Just things I never thought I would like. Some of the newer Chivas Regals, 18, 25-year-olds. And they've also done a series in the 20-year-olds and 30-year-olds. They're all just wonderful whiskeys. So I lost my snobbery and kind of went all around the board. And in the last few years, I've been drinking a little bourbon as well. But the whole whiskey thing started from this inner ear fluid imbalance that happened in 1997.
Wow. Everyone's got a story.
Yep. So this has been about a 26-year adventure so far. And it's been a lot of fun. I've met some wonderful people around the world because of whiskey. And I try to travel to any major event that I can in the United States or in Scotland or in London, wherever they'll let me go, that they're trying the new whiskeys for the year or the decade sometimes. So I haven't been there in a minute. But go there just to try the new whiskeys, to taste them and see if I like them or not. Because some of these are truly drinkers. Some of these are truly history. I'm putting them back and storing them because they're going to be gone someday. And some of them truly are investment and collection pieces. And know the difference when you buy them. Are you ever going to be willing to open that bottle? Or is it truly an investment? I mean, you spend $15,000, $20,000, $30,000 for a bottle of whiskey as an investment. Yeah, there's a day I might open it, but I probably bought it for an investment for the future. My problem is I don't want to sell any of it.
So how much is the collection worth today?
You know, every day is a different day. We're in a downswing. I'll give you the Knight Frank study that came out in 2018. So it's about 5 years old now. Showed single malt whiskey and collectible whiskeys, including bourbon, to have outperformed every other, we'll call it discretionary, investment such as art, cars, jewelry, furniture, at a rate of 584% over a 10-year period, or 58.4% per year. In the last couple of years, that's fallen off to around 51 to 53% in that range. Just a little bit of a downturn, mostly in the economy and just some in the whiskey market in general.
How concerned were you when they had the tariffs? I know England and the U.S. were having some tariff issues.
It was a 25% tax just on single malt Scotch. So you could get blended whiskey, you could get any other spirit out of the UK. The single malt Scotch was 25%. So anything that I was buying was typically over there and having it stored. And then when the tariff was lifted, I shipped it all over here.
Oh, that's genius.
A friend of mine has he has an auction house, and he allowed me to store anything I bought over there. So unless you exported it, there wasn't a tariff. And that tariff, it didn't last very long, about 2 years, 2.5 years. But once they lifted it, and government wise, the United States had to they had to put a tariff on us because we put a tariff on them. And the least exported item of all the alcohol items out of the UK was single malt Scotch.
Wow.
Because, you know, you've got most people are drinking blended whiskeys and they're drinking rums and tequilas and other things that are made there. So the lowest number of bottles being shipped. So they actually probably was a wise choice. It just hurt those of us who love single malts.
Oh, this is amazing what you've got going here. It sounds like you've built a lot of friends around the world. You've built built a name for yourself around the world with your. I have, but more because of friendships than whiskey collection, I think. I mean, I'm known for this. I get known for this because people see different videos and articles and photographs, and we have the ability to talk about it and share. But what happens is I create great friends from all around the country and all around the world that I get to go and travel and see and spend time with. And social media, in particular, Facebook, has allowed us to communicate 24 hours a day, 7 days a week without disturbing each other, which is kind of nice because the time zones are so different. But friends in London, in Switzerland, in Scotland, Australia, Israel, Japan. It's very widespread, and the whiskey community is pretty small in general. So it's a pretty tight-knit group. It sounds like you have a place to stay wherever you go.
Hopefully.
So
and the same in return when they come here to visit,
nice.
which is a lot of fun as well.
So when you're looking at buying bottles that are 20, 30,000, how does that come about? Do you have a friend group you guys get together and it's like, okay, this is a one-time opportunity. Let's all go in.
We do have a collecting group like that. So I have my collection and we have that collection of our little investment group. And we do it more for fun than anything. We get together and we sample whiskeys and try them. And if we would decide we want to buy a cask or we want to buy bottles, but we don't sell them. We put them up and keep them. And typically we have meetings and we drink them. And it's just kind of fun to be able to do that together. Say arbitrarily, it's $1,000 bottle comes to Oklahoma. Well, that's a lot of money to spend on a bottle of whiskey to sit down and drink. But you get 10 or 15 of your buddies together and you all pitch in 50 to $100 and you buy a bottle and you put some food on the table and you get together and you get to try something that maybe is one of 10 that came to the state or one of one that came to the state. We got to do the Year of the Rabbit from Glenmorangie last year. So the lucky number in China is 8. So they only made 888 bottles and only 88 of them came to the United States.
Wow.
And so we as a group got together and it was about $2,000, bought the bottle. So you can get 26 1-ounce pours. So we usually say, try to do 17 or 18 people so you get a little more. Everybody throws in $100 or $120. Well, if you went to buy that in a restaurant or a bar, if someone had it,
yeah,
it's going to be $250, $350 to get to taste something like that. So it's an opportunity to taste those things as a group. And it's a lot of fun.
Oh, I bet. We like to share what we have in our library as well. So we'll have to find some friends and see if we can get a nice spot.
Yeah, it's nice. I've got a couple of groups I'm in that we do an event once a quarter, typically, and we pay dues. And say your dues are $40 a month or $50 a month for the whole year. And that's what is done. They go and purchase the bottles, and then we show up for the event. There's nice bottles on the table. And then once a year, we'll have a big event, and everyone brings a bottle to share.
Oh, that's nice.
And so then we take all that money for that month and buy one bottle, something really nice, and get to try some really neat things that I wouldn't even afford to pay for in a restaurant. I'm just not going to pay that kind of money to taste something at retail. A lot of times we'll get sample bottles and things to try from different organizations, or they're putting on an event and you go to the event and you get to try that single cask of something, and you might end up with the opportunity to buy a bottle, but you get to try it before you buy it.
That's really neat. We used to have parties where I always say BC before child. We would have our friends over, and the rules were you had to bring a bottle that you've never had or you think no one else has had. And top 2 shelves. Like, don't look down, look up. Of course, now it's like look all around because you never know where they're putting stuff on the shelves. But just something that was different. We were young, we were in our 20s, so no Smirnoff, no Hennessy, something different. And it was fun. We did it 2 or 3 times. We'd offer a gift card to the winner. We had to train our friends, of course, because the first time it was peppermint schnapps that won against my Don Julio 1942. Someone said the house couldn't win. I didn't agree. So over time, it got better. And so we've been influencing our friends for probably about 12 years. And so it may be time now to step it up and say, hey.
And that, did you ever find anything you just didn't like?
Yes. Especially in the beginning. But as we've matured and grown older, it's getting better with our friends as far as when they bring stuff. But they always check first. They're like, hey, do you have this? What about this bottle? Especially because a lot of our friends like to bring, they know I like tequila, so they'll try to bring tequila. I'm like, is it additive free? What distillery? Is it celebrity owned? No.
Yeah. Well, some of those are really good and some of those are really bad.
Yeah.
I won't call any names, but
Yeah.
Of late, there's been a couple of really good ones, and I'll call the name of that. Michael Jordan and his collective, the basketball NBA owners, they did the Cincoro.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not typically do not care for Blanco tequilas. I like the Anejos and the Reposados and the extra Anejos. That Blanco was amazing, and especially at the price point, I was very impressed for a celebrity-owned company to come out with such a high-quality tequila.
I have the Blanco, but I haven't opened it. I've had the Anejo, and I think it has additives because it was super duper sweet, which I try to stay away from those just because they cause the hangovers and things. But I'll have to open that Blanco.
Yeah, it's probably the best Blanco I've ever tasted, and I'm just typically not a Blanco fan. I want something with at least a little bit of age on it. That comes from the whiskey. I mean, I'm used to having the color, and I'm used to having that little bit of a barrel taste on it. So when I get to a Blanco, I don't drink vodka, typically don't drink gin. I drink brown liquor and cold beer, and that's kind of, and I do like some tequila once in a while.
All right. Well, maybe we'll have you over at the library and we'll do a tequila tasting.
That'd be awesome. I'll bring a really nice bottle. I have started buying just for drinking pleasures only. Any new tequila that comes to the state.
Okay.
And so maybe a few that haven't come to the state yet, but hopefully we can get them here because they're really good.
Yeah, awesome.
I found just as I travel every now and then I see something that, hey, you need to try this tequila, or you need to try that tequila, and get to try it with a friend, and I'll find a bottle, in Vegas or in Dallas or in Fort Smith, Arkansas, somewhere that just not the same as what we have here, and get to try something before it hits the state. And that's a lot of fun.
That's really cool. I hope we get to that level of connoisseur where we get to travel and just make friends like you've done and just have experiences as we drink.
That's the thing I say about a single malt scotch in particular, bourbon the same way. It's when you first nose it and you first taste it, it should evoke a memory of something. And if it doesn't evoke a memory or take you back to a place or to a time or to a person, then you're creating a new memory at that moment with the people that you're with. And almost, I'll say 99% of the time, it takes me back to somewhere. I remember who I had that whiskey with the first time, or I remember where I was, or I remember what I had with the dinner I had when I drank it for the first time. And that memory, a lot of time it's just the smell will take you back to, to grandma's house, or it'll take you to a place on the beach. So great story is I keep some peat moss here in the room, and I'll burn it to let people smell what peat actually smells like burning. Had a young lady in here one day, and she was from north of Glasgow, Scotland. And I lit the peat, and she just started crying. Oh, wow. She goes, "I'm so sorry." I go, "Don't be sorry." What goes, "It's my grandmother's kitchen. She cooked with peat."
Wow.
So like we used wood back in the days, her grandmother cooked with peat. And as soon as I lit it, the smell just took her back to her grandmother's house.
Oh, that's amazing.
So experiences, stories, places, smells, things you've seen, things you've heard. It's all about friendship. It's all about the experience. That's what whiskey should be about. And in my world, cigars as well. I love cigars. So both of those things are, for me, triggers of people, places, and things.
Okay, so on topic of cigars, how do you pair a cigar with a whiskey?
So let me qualify myself. I know a little bit about whiskey. I'm a certified retail tobacconist. So I've had both, and I've been studied both. The trick is, if you know the cigar and you know the whiskey, pair light whiskeys with light cigars, medium whiskeys with medium cigars. If you got a big smoky, peaty whiskey, you need a big, bold cigar. Otherwise, one of them will get lost. So I don't know if you know who Michael Herklotz is. Michael Herklotz was the president of Nat Sherman Cigars. And he's gone on to start his own company called Fierro Tego. And basically, it's the Nat Sherman cigars plus some of his new stuff. So we're at the Nat Sherman townhouse one day upstairs, and we brought some old rare whiskeys in, and he goes and gets some nice cigars. And we basically did a taste, puff, taste for like an hour and a half. With this whiskey, should I puff the cigar first and then taste the whiskey? Or should I taste the whiskey and then puff the cigar? We'd already paired light to light, medium to medium, and full body. If you get a big, bold cigar in a real light whiskey, you're going to lose the whiskey, or it's going to offset your taste a little. The trick is you have to smoke enough cigars and drink enough whiskey that you can pair them together in your mind, know that this would taste really good with this. Otherwise, what we did that day is sit down and take so many cigars and so many glasses and start experimenting. And sometimes you'll surprise yourself. You'll get a big, bold whiskey and a light cigar, and they pair extremely well together, but that's not the norm.
Okay. Good to know. Roger's been getting into the cigar game, so we've been learning a lot. He got his first humidor last year.
Congratulations. Yeah, now that's your rabbit hole.
Yeah, that's another slippery slope.
I love how everything we do has notes, and we've talked a little bit about it on the show before. We had a DJ Maverick on. We talked about music and notes and how it evokes emotions and memories, and oh gosh, just cologne, cigars, like everything we do has notes. And I'm curious, and I haven't even thought about it for myself, but do you find yourself certain things you like that have notes? Like, this is what I'm drawn to.
Yeah, absolutely. Particular whiskeys, I really like things with finite sherry flavors, not just Oloroso sherry, finite sherry flavors that I can pick out the plum at the end of a whiskey. And there are no plums in the barrel, right?
Mm-hmm.
Those are all about the notes. When you're doing your tasting note, but you're doing your note in your mind as far as, does this ring a bell with me? Does this make me feel a certain way? And certain whiskeys make you feel a certain way. Same with cigars. And since you're into cigars, we'll do a little educational session here. There was a guy who had a cigar company, it's still in existence, called Avo Cigars. The gentleman that started that company's name was Avo Uvizian. And Avo Uvizian was a classically trained pianist. Wow. And if you watch any of the old movies in the 50s or 60s, you look at the score, it probably says Avo Uvizian. He wrote a little song with Frank Sinatra, Strangers in the Night. So he wrote the score for that. But if you'll notice, all of his cigars have a musical theme. The boxes will be shaped like a piano, or they'll be shaped like a record. There will be something to each cigar that has a musical note or a musical touch to it. He passed a couple years ago. Wonderful gentleman, got to sit and have a cigar and coffee with him a few times. Just loved cigars so much that he started doing his own outside the music world. But truly a world-renowned musician in and of itself, and then some of the finest cigars in the world.
That's really neat. So, having tasted all different types of single malts and bourbons, have you ever thought about having a brand of your own?
No. Let's just take a single malt. I'm a patient person, but I'm not that patient. So, number one rule has to be 3 years old, 3 years in the cask, right? Other than being made in Scotland, all those rules, but age-wise, it has to be 3 years old. So, from the day you spend however many $1 million to build you a distillery, there's other ways around that, but let's just say you're going to do it all the way. Go to Scotland, build a distillery in Scotland, and make good whiskey, you hope, and put it in a barrel, and you're not going to know if it's good or bad for 3 years. And then, why are whiskey so expensive? And that's why. Take there's a Glenlivet on the shelf over there from their Generation series. It's 70 years old. So imagine that whiskey was laid down and those few barrels were cared for 70 years by someone. Every single year, year after year, someone's tasting it, someone's, caring for that barrel. Generations, right? At least a generation passed from the time that was put in the cask until it was put in the bottle. So it's a lifetime commitment if you're going to do it and do it right. And it's just not something I've ever wanted to do. I want everybody else to do it and let me taste their product.
It's been my goal for about 13 years to have my own spirit brand. So I'm hoping to get that started. I don't have the millions for the distillery. So there's other ways to do it. Was at a great distillery in Nashville over the weekend. And what they actually do is they have a bottling facility and they travel around the country. And like behind you on the wall, there's some whiskeys called Orphan Barrels. Oh, and the Orphan Barrel series were the very first time they discovered them, they walk in and they find this 20-year-old whiskey that's been hidden away. Say there was, 100 barrels left or 500 barrels of it left, but there wasn't a mass quantity of it. It was an orphaned barrel, right? So maybe they didn't even know what it was, but it tasted good. Well, there are companies that are making spirits, putting them in the barrels and aging them. And the bourbon market's a little better. It doesn't have to be 3 years. It can be less. It's a Kentucky straight whiskey if it's been in the barrel for 2 years. But if it's only been in the barrel for 6 months, it's still bourbon. If it's only been there for an hour, it's still bourbon. But, you want color and you want flavor. So what some of these places are doing, they're going out and picking the best barrels individually from these different distilleries that are already in business, that are already making whiskey, and they're bringing them back and bottling them, putting their own brand on them. So this is a 4-grain or this is a high wheat or this is a high rye. And they're doing it mostly at cask strength in their own private bottles, which are wax dipped and they're beautiful. And they're doing a great business because
their master taster, their whiskey blender, has just a fantastic palate. So there's several places out there doing that very thing. They're bottling someone else's whiskey, but it puts them in the point they have their own brand.
Yes. Now, eventually, I would like my own distillery. But yeah, there's ways to get in, and that's probably how I'll be able to enter the market.
That's a great way to start. And that could raise the capital that you need to go to the next level. And if, say, it's going to be bourbon, of course, it can be made anywhere in the United States. Where you limit yourself with Scotch, it has to be made in Scotland. It has to be stored in Scotland. It has to be bottled in Scotland. So particular rules. And Scotland's not a bad place, but it's a long ways from home.
Yeah.
But when I'm there, it seems like home. I love to visit. It's beautiful country and just awesome people. And of course, I'm surrounded by whiskey everywhere I go.
That's awesome.